everyone, it's Heather Nichols. I have a card to share with you today, created with the Beautiful Blossoms stamp set. This set is perfect for your favorite coloring technique, so let's get started. I had so much fun coloring that I created a whole set of cards. All of these cards use the same techniques, and I'm going to show you those techniques and walk you through this Celebrating You card, and then you'll be able to create any of the cards that I shared. I'm using the Beautiful Blossoms stamp set. This is a red rubber set, and there are coordinating dies, and I'm also using the Just Vine background that coordinates with the Beautiful Blossom set, and I'll also be using the inside scoop for her stamp set to use that Celebrating You sentiment. I'm using Oreo ink and sugar cube ink. I'll be using my Copic markers, and I'll also use Prismacolor pencils with Gamsol to blend. I'm starting off with a piece of sugar cube cardstock that I'm putting into my MISTI. I'm going to stamp all of the images that I need for my card with Oreo ink onto the sugar cube cardstock. I'm setting the stamps into the MISTI, and then I'll close the lid of the MISTI to pick them up. I will ink up the stamp with Oreo ink, and then I'll close the door of the MISTI to stamp the image onto the sugar cube cardstock. To get a good crisp impression with the Oreo ink, you may want to stamp your image more than once. I'll continue this process until I have all of the images stamped for my project. Next, I'll cut out the images with the coordinating dies. I'll line them up on top of the stamped image. I'll tape them in place with purple tape, and then I'll send them through my die cut machine. And now it's time to color. I'm going to lay down a base color with the Copic markers on all of the flower elements, and then I'm going to go back and add my shading with Prismacolor pencils. To blend the colored pencil over the Copic colors, I'm going to use Gamsol. Gamsol is an odorless mineral spirit, and you're going to use that with a paper stump. You'll get the paper stump wet with the Gamsol and then blend that over the colored pencil to blend the shading over the Copic marker color. Next, I'm going to stamp the Just Vine background stamp with sugar cube ink onto a piece of Toffee cardstock. I'll set up the stamp in my MISTI, and then I'll close the lid of the MISTI to pick up the stamp on the lid. And then I'm going to use a little bit of adhesive to stick down the Toffee cardstock into my MISTI, and then I will ink up my stamp with sugar cube ink and close the lid of the MISTI to stamp the image onto the Toffee cardstock. When I use sugar cube ink, I always stamp more than once to get a crisp white impression. Alright, it's time to put this card together. I'm going to arrange the floral elements into a sort of bouquet or spray, and I'll have some of the flowers popped up just a bit with some foam squares, and I'll have some that are attached right to the card base. When I arrange floral elements on projects, I always start with the biggest elements first, like I'm starting with this bigger flower first, and then I move down from there, adding the next biggest things, and then the leaves, and then the littler pieces, and that just helps me fit everything in where it makes sense. Before I stamp my sentiment, I'm adding a line of stitching with my sewing machine right to the bottom edge of the cardstock. I set my card into my mini MISTI to add the sentiment. I'm using the Celebrating You stamp from the inside scoop for her stamp set. I'll set the sentiment where I want it to stamp on my project. I'll close the lid of the MISTI to pick up the stamp. I'll ink up the stamp with black ink, and then I'll stamp it right onto my project by closing the lid of the MISTI. All that's left is attaching this panel to a sugar cube card base, and then it's done. I hope you enjoyed my project, and I hope you learned something new today. You can find the supplies to create this project in the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody, and I'll see you next time.